My name is Jadan Roseborough. I'm here with my father.
Victor Parks.
And today we'll be discussing the story of Samson. I know for sure that it starts in Judges chapter 13, in the book of Judges chapter 13. And that's where we have the introduction to the parents of Samson, and we get the introduction into kind of their situation. But where would you like to start at, Dad?
I'd like to do a little overview, truthfully speaking. I thought it might be interesting. Samson is the last judge of all those individuals that he mentioned before you get to this last judge. Because after this judge, you go into kind of like events of the priest and the ordeal of that other guy priest who they made a priest and so forth. But as far as the individual judge, he's the last one, and it's given a lot of attention as far as chapter wise. I think it's 13, 14, 15, and 16. 4 chapters. And he is the more interesting character because for him to have the Spirit of God, for him to be a Nazarite, he wouldn't exactly be the model guy you want to follow, And even at the end, it's kind of like, well, did he make it in? Because the way the story laid out, even at the end.
True.
But you have to say yes because he's in the Hall of Fame of Faith of the 11th chapter of Hebrews.
That is true. He is
we are
mentioned.
surrounded with a great crowd of witnesses, and he's one of the witnesses. He's one of the witnesses.
It's true. You would think that a parent isn't going to necessarily say, you know what, I want my son to grow up to be just like Samson.
I know, right?
He wasn't necessarily.
He was breaking the rules. Oh my God, going to prostitutes. And they think, he did the very thing he wasn't supposed to do. God had left him because he didn't know. Oh my goodness. And it's just an interesting story to say. Wow, it's not too much you can say without raising your eyebrow at it. You might say, like,
Like he definitely he has a very interesting tale. It's almost as if he's almost if the Bible has an anti-hero, it's Samson. Like the kind of guy who he like in a way he doesn't necessarily want to be the hero, but if nobody else is going to step up, he's going to do it. And if you cross his path and you do something that's almost rude, it's almost like it's the Wild Wild West, and Samson's like Clint Eastwood. And if you cross his path and you do something wrong and it causes him to, he has a lot of revenge tales. Like that feels like a lot of the stuff that he does when he's going back and forth with the people that he's going back and forth. He even says it for a time. He says, once I do this, then I'll be finished. And he mentions that I did this because of how they treated me, or I'm no worse than them because of how they treated me. So it's almost as if you would think you want somebody to have God and like to say, I'm doing this because of God, or I'm doing this because this is the will of God. But even at the end, when he pulls down the pillars, he says, God, give me the strength to avenge my eyes that have been put out by the Philistines. So even then, it's not even at the end where he's like, God, give me the strength to avenge mine enemies and the enemies of my people. No, Samson just says, look, these people put my eyes out. Give me the strength to get them back. And God continues to use this kind of blunt object, which is kind of like Samson.
Since you said that, you give me the opportunity to ask this question. Are you ready for it?
Hey, only one way to find out.
I think. Say it again.
I said only one way to find out.
Okay. I think at the last verse it says it also. well, I think about 3 times outside the last verse, where it says, matter of fact, let me ask you, you know what that last verse of the book of Judges says, if I'm not mistaken.
The one where it says, and in those days there was no king, and every man did what was right in his own eyes.
Right. That phrase, there was no king. Do you think that's a good phrase, or like a positive phrase, a negative phrase? How would you look at that phrase? By I keep saying that, even though it's mentioned more than one time. Well, especially the last verse at the same time.
It's never mentioned
in
a good way. It's always mentioned in a negative light. It's always like after a horrible event happens, and once the dust settles and you're looking back at this crazy situation, then they mention to you, oh yeah, and by the way, there was no king, and everybody was just doing what they thought was right. And so it
exactly
doesn't feel like a good thing. It feels like there's like no central unity, like they're not doing what, it doesn't feel like a good thing. Even though the people should be following after what the priests are telling them, and the priests should be leading them closer to God, there should almost be no need for a king, but it's still portrayed in a negative light when they mention it.
And that's really done on purpose, believe it or not.
Why is that?
It's really done on purpose because as a observation, you just gave a very good observation. And you really concluded your answer from your observation. But that's not the way to look at it.
How so?
Because if you look at the beginning, it's really Joshua dies. And we know Joshua took over because God, appointed him to take over Moses. Then after Joshua, there was no appointed leader. No appointed leader. Now, that was done by God. Because if he appointed Joshua to take over Moses, even Moses told him to make an announcement. Joshua's the one going to take over and so forth. But then when Joshua was getting ready to die, God didn't say, okay, now I want you to go ahead and say whoever that he decided that you're going to take over. No. So it's almost to say, I want the people to have freedom. I don't want to have a central leader to say this, that, and the other. Because the leader will always do that. Y'all not doing what you got, he keeps things in order. But without a leader, it's almost like free reign. You do whatever you want to do. And that's why that phrase says, oh yeah, by the way, there is no king too, by the way. There is no central leader. But God is the one telling you this because the one that's writing is making you aware of this. As though everything seems like it's out of control. And your observer is rightfully so. But nevertheless, this is what God wants you to see on how he does things. Because the verse says it like this: my ways are not your ways. You will not do the thing that God does the way he does it. This is a clear example, believe it or not. A clear example. Even as you get ready to get into Samson. Samson is not your ideal character that you would say, I want my children to follow after, like you say, or even an adult to say, I want to be like Samson. He's just not your model character. But God is saying, yeah, but he's mine. Because, again, without Hebrew, you would say 50-50.
Yeah,
he might have made it, he might not. 50-50.
It's like the way his story
it's almost
ends,
like Solomon.
The way his story ends, you're like, he goes out on top, but he still goes out. And at least he doesn't kill himself, and he kills more of them than he killed in his whole career. But then again, it's exactly like you have to almost be an apologist for Samson. You almost have to defend him in a way.
Yeah, but see, those scriptures that I mentioned, they're the one that's helping you to get a different view from the scripture, not your own.
It's
because
true.
your own, you will leave like, oh my goodness. Don't be like Samson. This is what happens when you be like Samson. But no, God is saying, I'm really painting a picture of Israel. This is how Israel is looking, if I can just use that scenario. Because God, no doubt, called Israel just like he called Samson to the parent, so forth. He told the parent that he is going to be a Nazarite, so forth. He's going to be dedicated and so forth. And just like the children of Israel had the law to say the blessing, the cursing, this is what they expected of you and so forth. And yet, did they go out and do other things that was not supposed to? And the answer is yes, just like Samson. He started doing things that he wasn't supposed to.
Let's start right
and did
there.
They continue?
Let's start right there. Then let's start at that point. Your first point. Go ahead. Let's start right there in chapter 13, where we deal with the birth of Samson. Like you said, just like the children of Israel, he was called and kind of set aside. And so when we deal with the birth of him, or at the beginning of chapter 13, where it's talking about, it says, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. A certain man of Zariah named Moana, from the clan of Danites, had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." When the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me, 'You will become pregnant and have a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazarite of God from the womb until the day of his death.' Then Moana prayed to the Lord, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man of God you sent to us come again and teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born.' God heard Moana, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field. But her husband Moana was not with her. The woman hurried to tell her husband, 'He's here, the man who appeared to me the other day.' Moana got up and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said, 'Are you the man who talked to my wife?' 'I am,' he said. So Moana asked him, 'When your words are fulfilled, what is it to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work?' The angel of the Lord answered, 'Your wife must do all that I told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, nor drink any wine or other fermented drink, nor eat anything unclean. She must do everything I have commanded her.' Moana said to the angel of the Lord, 'We would like you to stay until we prepare a young goat for you.' The angel of the Lord replied, 'Even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord.' Moana did not realize that it was an angel of the Lord. Then Moana inquired of the angel of the Lord, 'What is your name, so that we may honor you when your word comes true?' He replied, 'Why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding.' Then Moana took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Moana and his wife watched. As the fire blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Moana and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Moana and his wife, Moana realized that he was an angel of the Lord. 'We are doomed to die,' he said to his wife. 'We have seen God.' But his wife answered, 'If the Lord meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from our hands, nor shown us all of these things, nor told us these things.' The woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of God began to stir in him while he was in Mahana, Dan, between Zoar and Eshtaol."
Okay, the latter part I want you to check, where at a very young age, the Spirit of the Lord, again, it goes back to how God is in charge of handling things without a central king, because he wants you to be guided by his Spirit, not by somebody telling you, thus and thus. He wants you to go from his Spirit, because you have the freedom to either listen to him or disobey him. So God is letting us see this is how he rules on this earth. So just as you see in the very beginning part of it, he said the Philistines. I'm trying to catch what he said. He said they reigned for like 40 years or something like that. Read that part about the 40 years of the Philistines. I can't remember exactly what you said on that.
And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years.
40 years. Okay, Samson, I don't know exactly where it's at, but he's supposed to have ruled for 20 years as a judge. So half of that, God is showing us Samson not all the way through the 20 years.
Well,
to me, I'm thinking...
he's not all the way through the 40 years that God had delivered them into the hands of the Philistines. It's almost like when he dies.
What I mean is, during his reign of 20 years, I don't know if that's near the end, but, you know, it's like David, he reigned for 40 years. Solomon, he reigned for 40 years. Saul, he reigned for 40 years. Samson reigned for 20 years. Within that 20 years, his life consists of this chapter, 13, 14, 15, and 16. It might be in the 16th chapter that I tell you that he reigned for 20 years.
And I'm thinking at the end of the 16th
it's showing you,
and the 15th chapter that he judged Israel for 20 years.
Yeah, there it is. So God is showing us in the beginning of his life, where you at in the 13th chapter, when he was young, God, the Spirit was upon him. Now, I'm thinking, because we don't have all of the 20 years, I'm thinking that from this chapter right here, it want to jump to near the end. It's almost like in Solomon's case. When we read Solomon, we catch it from the beginning, and then he seemed like he jumped all the way to near the end of his life, near the end on how he looked at the very end, especially when you get to the chapter 11 of 1 King. Because before you even get to 11th chapter of 1 King, you see how he built the temple and so forth. It just moves so fast that by the time you get to the 11th chapter, that's when his heart is failing. So now I'm thinking God is showing up in the beginning. He had a good beginning because he was being led by the Spirit and so forth. He don't say anything negative. Then by the time he started getting negative, I think that's more near the end of that judge. Now, he probably did good for the first maybe 19, 18, 17, 16 years. But near the end, that's where things start to crumble. And I'm thinking this is where God focused mainly on for the rest of the chapters.
So,
and also I noticed
well, I mean, because
that the name,
I was going to say, it doesn't really tell us that. It doesn't really tell us that he's doing it.
It don't.
But I can understand what you mean, because a lot of things I'm just thinking out loud chronologically.
Because it has to be near the end by the time you get to the way he died, no doubt. Because even from the way he died, it just seemed like it just everything are happening back to back.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm thinking that once he picks up from where he started doing negative, from the time he got married, on to the revenge of the people and so forth, everything seemed like it just happened just back to back. And they go to Delilah, or go to his wife rather, and say, find out his strength, and then go to Delilah and say, find out his strength. It just seemed like it's near the end of his rule, more so than just like maybe in the beginning or the middle. It just seemed like it's more near the end. It just seemed like, it just seemed like that.
I can see how you could sell me on that, but I'm still of the opinion that the wife situation that happens with him in the next chapter is him still... Before you go there,
I want you to notice that, because you kept saying it. When you was reading 13th chapter, it kept saying his name. It never said the wife's name. If mentioned the wife, it would just say wife.
Yeah,
it always says his name.
The husband, Moana.
So we don't know what the wife's name is.
That's true.
So it said the husband name.
Why do you think they do that? Is it just because...
I don't know. I'm just doing it as an observer. And then when they
even
get
later
into the
on when he
name, they ask
dies,
the angel, "What's your name?"
yeah. Well, that's one of those things where I saw that as because they're like that's and that'll be for another conversation. But that's like a little rabbit trail to follow. Is that Samson's of the tribe of Dan, and after we get done with this, we get hit with another situation of people from the tribe of Dan, and they take like somebody else's god and kind of take how they or take the priest from it and kidnap him and say, you're going to be the priest of us instead of the priest of him. And like instead of serving God how they should serve God, like that's the main thing the angel keeps trying to tell Moana is stop asking my name and worship the Lord. Serve this burnt offering up to the Lord. I'm not going to eat anything, but look at what God's going to do. And he keeps asking the angel, what's your name so that we can honor you? What's your name so that when this comes true, we can, he's trying to find something. I don't know if I ever, he's trying to find something to believe in. And it's weird to see that from somebody in the children of Israel. Like, why would he be concerned about trying to find out this guy's name to give him honor, to give him praise, when he should be giving praise to the Lord? And even when we look at his wife being barren, isn't that one of those things where Moses lets you know if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, and it lets us know the children of Israel were sinning again? It doesn't necessarily tell us how, but we can assume that they're serving other gods or they're not following God as they should. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah. As far as the name goes, and them asking, do you remember that Jacob asked the angel what his name was?
Yes, I remember that.
And so, to me, asking names, of course, even when Moses said, who can I say sent me, as though with your name, So, name to me, as far as the culture, because as you know, they like to name their children as meaningful, just not just throwing out any type of name.
Yeah, the name.
So I think they was all involved in names to say, what is your name so I can find out what the meaning of you. Your name had a meaning. So I think they just took it not only to say we want to go ahead and give you credit and so forth, but just to have who this they talking to. Because remember, they really wasn't sure if he was even an angel or not.
That's true. That's very true. And it wasn't until after they didn't see him anymore. It wasn't even the fact that they saw the miracle of him. Does it tell us what the miracle was? Was it that he rose up to heaven? I believe it was.
Yeah, he when they had some type of campfire, something like that.
He ascended in the flame of the altar.
Did some type of circular motion or something, and then he fade away or went up in the sky or something like that.
Yeah, but that didn't even make them believe he was an angel. It was not until they didn't see him around anymore that they were like, "Oh yeah, this is." And so, but it's a very interesting way, like exactly like how you said with Israel being called. It's like the Abrahamic story all over again, where this guy has a wife. She's not fertile. She's not having kids. She's barren.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes to him and tells him something amazing, almost something that you can't believe, and it like one of them believes while the other one doesn't. In the case of Abraham and Sarah, Abraham, like even though Abraham laughs, Abraham believes while it's kind of hinted at that Sarah doesn't believe. And in this one, the woman believes while it's hinted at to let you know that kind of Moana doesn't believe. So it's an interesting swap and role reversal, but it's just like how you say, they're called beforehand. And then, like it says, even while they're young, the Spirit of the Lord began to move at the camp. Like, that's showing that this is God doing something with this kind of promised seed. And how it's the Spirit of the Lord who's really causing these things to happen. Same as with Israel, even though all these nations are intimidated by them, it's the Spirit of the Lord moving in them that's causing these things to happen. And that's kind of
not only that, which is very important. That's kind of like a charismatic, how you can see things, very miraculous, that you see God on that person, and you know it's God the one that's doing it. But then again, God wants your participation at the same time. he know he gonna do his part, but then you gotta do your part. Because remember, when Jesus said, not everybody that says, Lord, Lord to me, he said, many are going to say, now here'll come. Did not we do good work or many work in your name? Well, that's God doing that. That's when he said, well, depart from me because I never knew you. You didn't do your part. The miracle might have been working through you, but you didn't do your part. And this is, again, a clear example of Samson on how his heart, just like in the case of Solomon, because when you get into the 11th chapter of 1 King, it said those things turned his heart away from God, you know. Mm-hmm. So just like the Nazarite vow, you, even though you're doing it, your heart got to be in it and say, oh, I'm not going to do this because I know I'm not supposed to. You know, God wants your participation. So we see that God is working through not only a barren woman, just as you so well put it, their beginning with the barren woman of Sarah and so forth. And, of course, it couldn't even happen unless God did a miracle. Because not only was she barren, she was old and barren.
It's true.
Kind of like past the childbearing years.
Like
it made it almost double a miracle or double impossible for you to have a child. So just as they were not even looking, talking about Samson's mom and so forth, they weren't even looking because she was barren, because they weren't even looking to have a child and so forth. So as God intervened and said through the angel, guess what? You're going to have a child, and he's going to have to be dedicated and so forth, and he's going to deliver his people and whatnot. Remember, in the beginning it said, I think it said the people did evil.
Yeah.
I start out again on the 13th chapter in the beginning.
It says, in the children of Israel.
I forgot exactly how.
It says, and the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord.
Right, that's it. So just as God said, I see what's going on, and I am ruling at my time to raise up judges. Now remember, they're not calling out to him at this time. They just at ease with the Philistine and having a good time with them. So God is raising up a judge to stir up the pot, to cause friction, to say, y'all not doing what I'm supposed to. Y'all not doing what y'all supposed to be doing. The reason why I'm sending Samson, because that spirit is going to have him so strong, and he's going to be dedicated. Y'all going to know he is from. Well, they didn't know it really because they kept saying, the Philistine anyway. What is his secret? How is this guy so strong and whatnot? And just like the demon, they do the same thing. When that guy, that kid that was possessed by the devil, and he would throw himself in the fire, he would break chains.
Yeah,
the demon he wasn't doing that. The demon was doing that. Man cannot break that. They don't have, no matter how strong they are, they can't do that type of strength. But the spirit demon, those guys, they're supernatural. That's why it's called supernatural strength, because it's not you. Well, God can do the same thing. Through Samson, that's exactly what he did. He is working him so strong that he probably wasn't buff like the Incredible Hulk or Hercules.
Yeah, he probably didn't look like it because they were asking him, where did your strength come from? Why would you ask someone who was with a lot of muscles, how are you this strong? You would know why they were that strong.
Yeah, even with that type of strength, it couldn't be lifting up